Okay, everyone, how are you doing? This is Kirk Bankstad, and I am with the Minocqua Brewing Company. And, to tell you the truth, I don't think I need these right now. I don't. So, because I don't have anybody to talk to on the other side. So the reason I am going live today is because Ben Cominos usually does. He's our crackpot. Uh, 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 he's our guy in Northeast Wisconsin who does talk. He's a talk show host, and he does his office hours with Ben Cominos every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Now, if anybody lives in Wisconsin, I'm sure a number of you do. You will realize, or you probably know that the Appleton area was hit pretty hard with a tornado yesterday. So Ben, unfortunately, lives, I believe, in Neenah or Menasha, which is a little town close to Appleton, and he is completely out of power. So we were supposed to do a show today. We do office hours every. It's called office hours, and it's every. Patty does it on Mondays. Ben does it on Tuesdays. I'm supposed to be doing it on Wednesdays, but I've been super busy with the company, and I haven't been able to do it for the last couple of weeks. But it's for our paid subscribers who pay for our Substack page, and it's supposed to be more interactive. I'm not doing it paid today because I want to kind of give some updates on what's going on with the Minocqua Brewing Company. We've been in the news recently. I think I prompted that by writing an article on Sunday that illuminated. Wait a second. I just want to make sure we are live here. I think we are, but I want to make sure. Okay, we are. So I couldn't see any comments, and usually we have lots of comments. So I just want to make sure. I wanted to update everybody on what's going on with the Minocqua Brewing Company. And Ben isn't able to be with us today because he doesn't have power. So basically, on Sunday, I wrote an essay that told everybody that the Wisconsin Department of Revenue was in the process of trying to revoke our brewery license. And I talked about our ongoing fight with them, which started last January when we made a mistake, or when we were notified by the Department of Revenue that we hadn't paid about $500 worth of excise taxes because my accountant paid those taxes in Illinois because we were making some beer of ours in Illinois. And so we paid the taxes. We just paid it to the wrong state. Normally, that's a pretty easy thing to fix. And then we did. We tried to fix it. So $500. Excise taxes, by the way, are what brewers have to pay per barrel of beer produced. So in Wisconsin, it's like $1 a barrel. And in Illinois, it's actually more than $1 a barrel. So we overpaid in taxes in Illinois, but we didn't pay them in Wisconsin. And we tried to change that. And when we heard that the Department of Revenue said we needed to do that. So we tried to pay the taxes, and then all of a sudden, the Department of Revenue said we couldn't pay the taxes because we were contracting beer to be made in Illinois, and they wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it, even though it was technically our beer. So anyways, this started this wild ride with the Department of Revenue and the Minocqua Brewing Company that has that stopped. The train stopped in June when they confiscated some of our beer, and the train kept on going until about last week when the Department of Revenue sent us a letter saying they were going to revoke our permit to be a brewery in Wisconsin. So it's been a wild ride because it all started with about a $500 tax bill. I dare say for a business, having a $500 tax bill is kind of a a walk in the park. $500 is not a small amount personally, but for a business, it's pretty small. Uh, so it all started small, and it kept on getting small, but they kept on finding other things because we worked with them. We were very transparent. We gave them all of our books. We gave them all of our invoices, and all of a sudden, all of these little things kept on piling up, and they looks like they were trying to find things that they could ding us on. In particular, they said we had 80 complaints against us. Some of them complained that we put COVID vaccines in our beer, and which is funny because I think I might have responded to an online troll at some point who gave us a bad review that the reason he didn't like the taste of our beer is because if we had a sensor in the pint glass that sensed if you hadn't had your COVID vaccine yet, then the sensor exploded and released the COVID vaccine in the beer and forced you to get one, which I take pride in some of the ways that I troll the trolls when they give us fake bad reviews, and that was one of them. Anyways, apparently that got so much love that people called the Department of Health on us in Wisconsin, and complained that we put COVID vaccines in our beer. Similarly, so there's an online rumor floating around that if you had a MAGA hat on and you came to one of our tap rooms, we spit in your beer. And somebody put that in a bad review, and a fake bad review. And I think I might have responded, well, you don't want to try us, do you? Because we certainly would prefer to not have the MAGA element come join us and be our customers. I've been pretty explicit that I wanted intelligent, sane people that cared about other people, empathetic, open, tolerant. That's the customers that I'd rather have. And I'm yes. Am I intolerant? Yes, I'm intolerant of the intolerant. And there's a whole philosophical way to think about that. But that's the only people I'm intolerant of, is the intolerant. Maybe perhaps those who are purposefully ignorant as well. I'm a little less tolerant of those. But anyways, all of the things that I've written have been tongue-in-cheek online, but there have been up to 80 complaints lodged with various state agencies against us that were completely false, and that were the reason that the Department of Revenue kept on looking at us, looking into our business practices. They never found anything that related to the allegations that caused them to start investigating us in the first place after we tried to pay this $500 tax bill. They never found anything because there wasn't anything. People said we spit in our food. Well, we don't serve food because we're a tap room. We might have frozen pizzas in our Madison location that we put in a little pizza oven that everybody can see. It was frozen to the pizza oven back to so it's kind of been a joke when people say we have bad food, that obviously they're giving us a fake review. So the Department of Revenue couldn't find a thing that related to these complaints, but they found other things that were very minor. They found we were able to import wine through a distributor, which was very small in Mequon, and they didn't have a vehicle because they kind of just distributed for like one type of wine from California that they were related to the guy who made it, and they distributed to steakhouses, but they were a distributor still were a distributor. So we basically helped them get the wine that we made, that we like cooperated with a winery to make, called Choice Wine, from California, to our warehouse so we could serve in our tap rooms, which we are legally allowed to do because we had hit this 250 barrel threshold to serve wine and cider along with our beer in both of our tap rooms. Anyways, they said that because we drove the product from their warehouse to our warehouse, that we were part of the distribution process, and because we're a brewery, we can't be distributors. Tiny things like that. all of which, as soon as we heard that they didn't like that, we said, okay, we won't do that anymore. We didn't think it's a problem getting something from point A to point B that we've paid a distributor for, because Wisconsin laws forced us to have a middleman to simply serve wine that from friends of ours in California. So these are many small things. I've identified all of the small things in the essay that I wrote on Substack, and then I copied and pasted on Facebook on Sunday. So if you want to know the details of why the Department of Revenue is trying to revoke our brewer's permit, simply go to our essay in my essay on Sunday. All the detail is there. Now, the question is, I wrote about this because I know that the media in Wisconsin in particular leaves a lot to be desired. So I no longer do interviews with media outlets in Wisconsin because I'd rather write it all out myself and get exactly what I want out there, so that there can be no confusion as to what I say. I don't like to be misquoted by reporters who seemingly misquote me a lot, and I don't like that. And so I wrote it all down on Sunday, and I gave our side of the story, and sure enough, I got a bunch of reporters all trying to talk to me in the yesterday, and it was kind of funny. But let me back up. I said I don't talk to reporters, and that sounds pretty Trumpian, doesn't it? That sounds a lot like Trump. And I agree. Trump hates reporters because they point out that he's a criminal. I have found that, in Trump said back in the day, fake news, fake news, fake news. Well, they were actually, back in the day, mainstream media was still owned is still owned by businessmen, but not consolidated and owned by those who have bent the knee to Trump. In the last year, we've seen media completely capitulate to Trump, and they hadn't done that before he was elected. So a year ago, 2 years ago, before Trump was president, mainstream media was sick, but it wasn't dead. And he didn't like them because they would attempt to call out his lies, even though they often didn't do a very good job, because they're not trained to deal with somebody who lies ad nauseum. Today, on the flip side of Trump's presidency, I think I sound a lot like Trump, but I think the circumstances are different. I think mainstream media is kind of dead at the moment, and because of that, and it's dead because you have, the Ellisons from Oracle. Larry Ellison is basically trying to buy both CBS and CNN. He's got CBS already. We've seen how Barry Weiss has killed CBS News and 60 Minutes. We've seen how Elon Musk has bought Twitter and has made that kind of a cesspool. I know personally, Facebook is no longer what it used to be. Our huge Facebook presence, we get throttled from time to time, and we don't understand why. It's being called shadow banned, I believe. Who else? Bezos owns the Washington Post. So mainstream media has consolidated, and the Sinclair Broadcasting System owns tons of these regional news agencies. Gannett, and let's get to Wisconsin now. Gannett owns the Milwaukee Journal. Gannett also is USA Today, and they're basically called a small town newspaper killer because they buy up a small town newspaper, they fire all the local reporters, and then they only have reporters reporting like regionally, and nobody wants to read regional news. They want to read hometown news, and so that's why these papers slowly die. So Gannett owns the Milwaukee Journal, and I want to talk about the Milwaukee Journal for a second. Yeah, and so yes, the Milwaukee Journal, in my mind, most of their political reporters have been laid off. I believe they only have a few statewide folks who report on politics on a daily basis, and which means an immense amount of things are missed in the state of Wisconsin and underreported. I also think some of their headlines suggest that because these reporters are probably young, they no longer can afford to pay seasoned reporters, that these reporters are taught to always give two sides of the story. Well, if one side is a lie and one side is the truth, you can't give two sides of the story. And so I've accused the Milwaukee Journal of both siding fascism. So that's the reason I don't do interviews with the Milwaukee Journal. And it's funny, every time they email me to get me to respond or give a quote, what I've been starting to do is to respond to them, send an email, and then screenshot that, and then post it on our own Facebook page, because I usually respond in somewhat of a snarky way. Now, should I play along with the Milwaukee Journal so that they can provide even a news story about my company? I don't, because we have about 500,000 people who either follow my Facebook page or follow the Minocqua Brewing Company Times on Substack, or follow us on Threads, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the different, Blue Sky, all the different socials. So we got about 500,000 people who I can reach without having to talk to the Milwaukee Journal or we got another email from Fox Digital today, which I love getting emails from Fox, because I really give them a wallop whenever whenever they try to reach out, because who needs to talk to Fox News when you know the slant that's going to be broadcast on their channels? I do also want to talk about Wisconsin Public Radio. I've messed with them yesterday. They tried to do a story about us getting our brewer's permit canceled, and I've noticed, I even knew a really senior guy at the Wisconsin Public Radio, and when Trump was elected, and when Doge started cutting off all the funding to, I think, the corporate broadcasting corporation or something, whatever kind of funds public radio and public television. You've seen all these things, like NPR is on the ropes because they don't get funding anymore. Well, Wisconsin Public Radio is part of NPR, and so their budget has been slashed. And I personally, I live in Madison and I live in Minocqua, and Madison is kind of where WPR is the home. And I've had conversations with guys who have been there forever who were forced to go to early retirement. And so while this was happening, there was a young guy named Rob Menser in Wausau. Now, if you're and he's been promoted to managing editor of the entire statewide news organization. Now, this guy is probably still in Wausau for all I know. And Wausau, Wisconsin is a small city. And if you're relegated to Wausau as part of the Wisconsin Public Radio, there's a chance that you're not as good as the reporters who have made it to Madison. It's still a small market. Wisconsin's a small state. So, the reporters, but WPR had a reputation, a really good one over the course of, 30 years of punching way above its belt in terms of quality, but because we're such a small state. Anyways, he was reported managing director of the Wisconsin Public Radio, and immediately did a hit piece on my company. He used all of the verbiage that was used in a lawsuit against us by the lawyer who also represents the Republican Party of Wisconsin. And his name is Matt Fernholz. He's part of a law firm in Waukesha. And so I knew that Matt Fernholz, who's the lawyer of the Republican Party, had fed, or somebody associated with Fernholz or this lawsuit had fed Rob Menser a bunch of dirt that was unsubstantiated against my company about my super PAC. And when he asked me those questions, I knew that he was talking to the Republican Party. And I basically said, dude, the interview's over. Like, this is not what I signed up for, to get grilled on stuff that's not true, that's from Republican operatives. So I stopped working with Wisconsin Public Radio as well, and I believe they've tilted more conservative because they need funding. They die without federal funding, and they probably decided that they have to play with the Trump regime in order to survive this period. Do I blame them? Yeah. If you got to feed your family, you got to do what you got to do. I don't want to be a part of any news organization that pulls their punches because they have to get funded by Trump. So anyways, that was a long-winded way of saying I'm pretty happy that we've expanded my company's mailing list, the Minocqua, which it's up to about 165,000 people who subscribe to the Minocqua Brewing Company Times on Substack, and we do our own news. Now, are we reporters? I wish I had enough money to hire real reporters. I don't. I have enough money to hire talk show hosts who do political commentary and write political essays about the politics of the day from a progressive upper Midwestern lens. So we try to do the best we can. We are small. We are way underfunded because it's basically profits from selling beer and selling T-shirts that I can try to fund our little news agency or independent media station on our Substack page. But we do our best. But because mainstream media has failed us so badly, I'm trying to grow this independent media platform so that we can be the purveyors of truth, or else give another perspective that's not state-sponsored propaganda and spin. So that is why you may see some snarky posts from us responding to most of the news stations in Wisconsin. I've lost my faith in most of them. Now, coming back to our issues with the Department of Revenue. Hopefully I'll have more information tomorrow. I was going to actually do the same thing tomorrow, but because Ben didn't have any power up in Neenah, I was supposed to be interviewed by him today. I decided to go on anyways because I think we might have been the most trending article on the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel yesterday. So obviously people are interested in whether or not the Minocqua Brewing Company is going to fold or not. So what I do know is we filed an emergency injunction yesterday to first get our warehouse permit. The Department of Revenue, and one of the little things they found is that I hadn't reapplied for. I missed a deadline. All right, we had a warehouse permit to store beer. I let it lapse because the breweries I was working with had their own storage space, and so I didn't need a warehouse for a time. And then business picked up, and then we built our own warehouse. And I had forgotten over the course of a couple of years that I needed to reapply for a warehouse permit. They told me that. We applied immediately. Within a week, they said, "Oh, you need a warehouse permit to store your beer." I'm like, done. We applied in late January, early February. And when we basically weren't making any beer because it's kind of like the dead season of breweries. So it would have been a perfect time to get that permit because we didn't really have any beer sitting in there anyways. And so we weren't doing anything illegal. And so they didn't give us that permit. And for 5 months, they sat on it, which really hurt our ability to do business because we need to make a ton of beer in order to be able to serve it at both of our tap rooms and distribute it across the upper Midwest. Now, luckily, we've got other space, we've got plenty of, we got people making our beer all over the place. And those folks, our brewers, can help store some of it. So we're able to do that, but it's not centralized, and it's really difficult for us to get beer to Minnesota, all throughout Wisconsin and to Illinois if we don't have our own warehouse. So they sat on that warehouse for 6 months and just last week said they're not going to give us this warehouse. I was like, how are we supposed to And part of the reasons they are trying to revoke our brewer's permit is because they say we're storing beer in a warehouse without a permit. Well, how are we supposed to do business if we can't store beer in a warehouse? And they're holding on to a permit that my lawyers say are generally approved within a week. And state statute forces the Department of Revenue to approve these permits if everything else is right and everything else was right. So we are going in front of a judge, hopefully in a week, to force them to at least approve a warehouse permit that they've used to tell us that we're doing things outside of the law, which is kind of a catch-22. We can't run our business without this permit, and they've been sitting on it and not allowing us, to get the permit for months. That's unusual, and it's purposely trying to put us into a catch-22. So that is what's currently happening, and we hope to. Fred, my lawyer, said we think we're going to have a hearing on that one issue early next week, which might be August 4th, which is the day that we're supposed to have, lose our permit to do beer, or lose our permit to sell beer in Wisconsin. Now, about that issue, there is due process associated with a brewery revocation, and so we have the ability to appeal this decision by the Department of Revenue, and we will be appealing it. And every action that they can't shut us down until all of our appeals, and we've had due process. We've heard that story all along. Due process, that's what we do in America. We're supposed to do in America, is they're supposed to give everybody due process before a decision is made. We're not doing that. ICE is not doing that with American citizens at the moment, but we should be able to get due process in this in the Department of Revenue's attempt to revoke our brewer's permit. So we're going to appeal this revocation. We don't know when the date of that appeal is going to be, but we do know the process. So the first appeal is going to go to an administrative review judge, which is not like a normal judge that you and I kind of know about. Normal judges start at the circuit court, and they're elected by the county, and then they go to an appeals court, which is a region like in Wisconsin, and then after that is the Supreme Court. So there's 3 levels of normal court. This is an administrative court judge, which are judges hired by departments in Wisconsin. So this is going to be a judge that's hired by the Department of Revenue that deals with internal things that the Department of Revenue does. We don't love our odds with this first judge because these judges get paid by the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue is going after me. So we don't love our chances with this judge, but we do think that once this gets to circuit court, we can win because most of the things that we're being charged with are interpretations of a brand new law that came into place in Wisconsin, about a year and a half ago, that even created this agency, the Department of Alcohol Enforcement. This didn't exist like a year and a half ago, and there was a bunch of funding that created this enforcement bureau for alcohol, and many of the agents that have been hired within a year or two, and they're trying to interpret a brand new law that in part enables breweries, because there's so many breweries who have tap rooms, to get on a more fair level with bars. And to get on a more fair level, tap rooms wanted to be able to serve beer or wine and spirits. Normally, tap rooms are only allowed to serve beer. So we wanted to get, and it makes all the sense in the world. Why should we be limited, even if we have to adhere to all of the, making sure we serve everybody safely and don't get them too drunk? Why can't we serve wine and liquor as well? So that was rectified. These agents are trying to figure that out. One of the issues in this new law is that in order for tap rooms to serve wine and liquor, they have to produce at least 250 barrels of beer every 3 years. And it's And so we do that. We fly by 250 barrels every year, but because the Department of Revenue a few years ago told me that they would not allow me to send beer to people from Wisconsin online. And we have tons of fans across America that buy our beer online, which God bless them because they spend a lot in shipping, but they buy it online, and I need to sell to them online because I've been boycotted by normal beer distributors because of our politics. So I was told by the Department of Revenue years ago that I couldn't sell my beer online, even though they allowed us to all do that during COVID. So obviously it's not a safety problem. Obviously they can choose to bend this law when they want to, when there's a nationwide, pandemic. But they relaxed. They just kind of willy-nilly decided I couldn't do that a year or two ago, and which forced me to go find a brewer that would make my beer in Illinois where we can actually send beer online to people. So that's the reason I'm making beer in Illinois. We make way more than 250 barrels a year, but a lot of my beer was made in Illinois for this reason. And they said that beer didn't count. They said that beer didn't count towards the 250 barrels I needed to serve wine and cider in my tap room. We argued that there's a Supreme Court case called Granholm v. Heald that says that I had every right to do this, and we think we can win in court on that. But the even more egregious thing that happened was we argued that they shouldn't interpret the law that way. They said we're gonna, and so we're like, okay, well, listen, we're making beer in Wisconsin too. We're making more of it in Illinois. So we hit the 250 barrel mark of beer making in Wisconsin and paid excise taxes on that beer on July 10th. We told them we had a plan. We're like, if you're not going to count the beer we make in Illinois, we're still going to sue you about that, but we want to get out from under this thumb. They confiscated my beer 2 months ago, and I was like, I don't want that to happen again. So we made, even though it's not in our budget, we made more beer than we probably need, but we had to hit this thresholds to get them off our backs. So we did. We paid the excise taxes on July 10th. We have made 250 barrels of beer in 2026 in Wisconsin. So our permit to sell wine and cider is fine. We've never relinquished it. There was no process to relinquish it because this law has only existed for a year and a half. They asked us to relinquish it, and we're like, no, we're fixing it. We're in the process of fixing it, and we have fixed it. So they can't come at us now for that, and that's why we think we're going to win in court. And that's also why we think they're being way too heavy-handed. We fixed the problem. We don't think you were even right in your interpretation of the problem, but we still fixed it. We fixed all the issues. We fixed them as fast as we could. There was none of the issues amounted to more than $500 of violations. And so they're tiny, which leads me to conclude that it's not about what we've done. It's about finding things that will rack up to enough things to try to put us out of business in Wisconsin. And that, to me, is why would they be doing this? Either one of these agents, and her name is Nicole Zautner, either this agent is it's the most wildly overzealous, I need to solve crime, even though crime doesn't exist. Either she's the most overzealous, federal or special agent for beer we've ever known, or somebody's telling her to find whatever you can find to rack up violations so we can put them out of business. Although I'm not a fan of law enforcement because I've been thrown in the slammer a few times simply for giving political speeches up in Minocqua, I don't like law enforcement in general. I feel like a lot of them are, failed high school kids who got teased too much or something, and so now they have to let it all out on normal people because they have a little bit of power. I don't think that's necessarily the case happening here. I can't believe it that somebody would be so evil to try to kill brewing company in the state of Wisconsin. So what I do think is that somebody in government is either talking to the Tavern League, which is full of big distributors who hate the fact that I've been able to be successful without them. The Tavern League is also a wing of the Republican Party. They you know, they have tons of lobbying money because bars kind of pay dues, and they use that money to get Republicans elected. So they're very in sync with the Republican Party, and they're made up of rich distributors who don't like little breweries that are too mouthy like me. So I think that might be somehow or another, somebody in the Department of Revenue is talking to those guys, or even more nefarious. And I really have a hard time believing this, and I don't want to believe it. But ever since Trump won, I have been very critical. Ever since basically Tony Evers blocked our company's lawsuit to get rid of voucher schools, and I found out that he was supported by the voucher school lobby, which is definitely a Republican kind of thing. That when they want to kill off public schools manage to teach kids how to be critical thinkers. And once you're a critical thinker, you tend to vote for Democrats. And so that's why the voucher school lobby in part exists, is to indoctrinate kids into religious schools. When I found out that the voucher school lobby supported Evers, and Evers is supposed to be the education governor, it blew my mind. But anyways, he blocked our lawsuit. I lost my faith in Evers, and I've been steadily losing my faith in the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, because we've seen so few of them have the guts to stand up to Trump. And so many times they've rolled over and played dead when we needed them to stand up and stop government and throw sand in the gears. So I've been criticizing Evers. I've been criticizing Attorney General Josh Kaul. I've been saying they needed to do more. I helped form the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition in Wisconsin, which is also includes the Democratic Socialists of America and Democratic Socialists of Wisconsin. It's part of the coalition. We all are scared of what Trump is doing, and we're all trying to fight back in a resistance manner. And ultimately, out of that coalition came Francesca Hong, who's running for governor. The establishment's trying to do everything they can to not let her win the primary. I briefly ran against Francesca because I didn't like the fact that, she disavowed a joke that I put on Facebook. But my beliefs and her beliefs overlap probably 100%. So I got out of that race. I didn't have enough organization behind me. I failed to get enough signatures. So when I didn't get on the ballot, I threw my support behind Francesca. I fear that if it's not the distributors who are trying to get me out of Wisconsin, and it's not the Republicans, it could still be the establishment, and that would be unreal. And that it's a little, even saying it makes me feel a little bit like this has got to be a conspiracy theory. But it is the Department of Revenue, and Evers is the governor, and this is part of the executive branch. So, seemingly, if Evers wanted to stop this, he might be able to put in a word to the head of the Department of Revenue. And if nothing else, I've been pretty darn supportive of Democrats. My organization, my super PAC, helped flip the Supreme Court to progressive. We even made a can of beer for Governor Evers a couple years ago to help get him elected. So I would be deeply sad if I were to learn that an establishment Democrat is behind us being, kind of canceled in Wisconsin. But it is what it is. I don't know who's. It still could be just an overzealous agent. It still could be that anyway. And regardless of who it is, it's over the top. It's too heavy-handed. We're gonna fight it, and according to my lawyers, this is not all going to hit the fan next week. There is a process involved, and usually when you have to schedule hearings with a judge, that takes a long time. So I'm not terribly worried that anything's going to happen dramatically in the next few weeks. um, which leads to believe we're probably going to finish out the summer strong. And there's a few things that could happen this summer that I'm pretty excited about. One is we're pretty sure Mitch McConnell is in a vegetative state, uh, because he's come out with two kind of fakey announcements that he's doing fine, even though those are pictures that he's releasing, and he's not speaking to anybody. So we've been saying that we're going to celebrate Half Price Beer Day in celebration of Mitch McConnell's life, and we suspect that's going to happen on August 3rd or August 4th, because those are the days that if he is announced dead earlier than that, then Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear can call a special election. That special election could go to Thomas Massie, who is trying to release the Epstein files, and he's one of the sane Republicans, non-bootlicking MAGA Republicans in Kentucky. And so we suspect that Mitch McConnell is probably already dead or incapacitated, and that they might pull the plug as soon as that deadline passes, which means there might be a party at our tap rooms on August 3rd or 4th. And I think we're still going to ask those. That's the August 4th is the day that we're supposed to get our brewer's permit revoked. So it all comes ahead on August 4th. So I'm planning on being in Minocqua on August 4th. And if they announce that Mitch is no longer with us, we will be offering half price beer on both our Madison and Minocqua tap rooms that day. And the second big thing, and probably the reason that a lot of people want to see me gone, is because we've made the term Free Beer Day famous across America. And Free Beer Day is the day that we give beer away all day long when that certain someone dies, when the McDonald's induced blood clot finally moves. That is the day that we will really celebrate, not just with half price beer, because Mitch only caused half of our problems. This guy, the orange shit gibbon, caused 100% of our current problems, and we will celebrate that day. And I have an assumption that because we've went viral multiple times over by selling those Free Beer Day t-shirts and talking about this, I have a feeling that's probably a big reason why my current brewer's license in Wisconsin is they're attempting to revoke it. So folks, that is the update. If I have any more information tomorrow, I think, my lawyer, Fred, is dealing with all these hearings and setting the hearings now, and he's writing briefs and all that stuff. I will let everyone know. And, but I figured I'd just jump on today because Ben, all of Appleton, all of Outagamie County is either underwater or blown away. So he couldn't, and I apologize to you who are listening. If you're able to listen in Northeast Wisconsin, I apologize for what happened. If your house is in bad shape, I really feel sorry for that. So anyways, thanks a lot for listening, everyone. And I will update everyone more as I know more about the state of our company versus the evil Wisconsin Department of Revenue. All right. Take care. Bye.